Come on, let's go for a walk. All right, go ahead. Okay, all done. Let's go for a walk. Good. All right, I'm out on my little walk with Boone that I do every day after training. We're just gonna cruise here. And I wanna share some thoughts with you guys if you're interested in them. This is just gonna be the dog walking around, so if you're watching and you're not able to listen, then this video might not be for you. But I wanna talk a little bit about e-collars and some things that I think are important that you never really hear talked about very much. So, you know, I can remember over the years working with different people, going to different seminars, and I could name people who have said things that resonated with me that I thought, wow, I really need to incorporate that into my training. So the most recent one was Ivan Balabanov, who's a multiple-time world champion in IGP / police dog sport, if you don't know what that is. And Ivan said, you know, your dog knows how to respond to the e-collar, was his assertion. So all this low-level e-collar nicking and constant pressure from the e-collar is probably not necessary. Boone here to get your dog to do what you want, and you probably shouldn't be using your e-collar in that way. So take note of that. I also can remember Carlos Ramirez at a seminar one time. Carlos is a commercial police dog trainer and IGP guy. Carlos was talking about having your dog heel, come on buddy, and how you really don't want pressure by your side, so you don't want e-collar by your side or even prong collar by your side. Go ahead, bud. What are you doing? You're okay. Go ahead. If you want your dog to be by your side, then you don't want pressure by your side. So that made a lot of sense to me as well. And I can remember years ago, Marc Patton. Marc runs Green River Retrievers. He's last couple of years a top Derby retriever trainer in the country, top Derby kennel in the country. And I can remember Marc, I think we were talking about getting the dog to lay down and tapping on the back of the dog's neck instead of the front of the dog's neck. And I can remember Marc saying, yeah, the dog will move away from the pressure. Also Michael Alice, you see it all over, but it's only mentioned, it's not really mentioned much in places where a normal person with a pet dog that has an e-collar would hear it, which is probably just because the people who are training those dogs don't even realize it and haven't studied all this sport and working dog stuff that I tend to study. If you look also, you'll see a number of places. Yesterday with Boone, I actually tapped the collar when I was trying to do a sit for him, and he jumped right out of position. So if you think about it, a dog knows how it's born. They're born knowing how to move from the sun to the shade, right? So they know. Go ahead, bud. You're all right. They know how to move from the sun to the shade. They know how to move from cold to hot, hot to cold. They know if you use your e-collar for counter surfing, they touch the counter and the e-collar goes off. They touch the trash can, the e-collar goes off. They know to move out of that area and stay away from that. Electronic fences, they know to stay away from those. So the dog knows how to respond to the electronic collar already, at least in as far as he knows to get away from that uncomfortable spot. So how do you incorporate that in training? Well, if we know that that's the case, then all we really have to do is two things. One, I think, is to teach the dog which direction to go when he hears a certain sound. So when Boone hears H-E-R-E, when he hears that command, he knows that if he continues on forward, that area in front of him is about to become uncomfortable, kind of very uncomfortable. So his little system knows that through me only really doing it with him a few times. I didn't do a lot of tapping and low-level conditioning or any of that stuff. I taught him really thoroughly that the cue meant to come back to me with a reward, with food as a puppy and with a ball later on. And then I might have used the prong intermediate as an intermediate step on a long line once or twice in that scenario. Only ever really used it when he didn't come when he was supposed to. Now I'm using it with this field work that we're doing, and I'm using it in the same manner. If he's not coming to me, then he only gets corrected if he doesn't come. I've got no pressure near my side at all. It's all rewards, whether that be a prong collar, an e-collar for healing, any of that stuff. Dog's on at least a 6-foot leash. No pressure occurring at my side within 6 feet of me. I just noticed Pat Burns, and I haven't got to see it yet, has a video out, or video series or seminar out, where he talks about the trouser one in the 5-foot circle, and I think he's probably right about that, meaning the 5-foot circle around the handler. He's probably right about that. Pat would know. So, you know, you listen to credible people and you hear what they say, and you incorporate that into your own observations, and you start doing some stuff that might be a little bit different. So I mentioned in today's video, you know, if Boone's out in the field away from me on this pile work that we're doing, where he's running back and forth and picking up bumpers and sitting along the way sometimes, learning his casting words, I do have my e-collar on, and I did use it some today. You can hear the sound box in the video. What you doing, bud? You relaxing? And that's on a level 3 on a mini educator, which you can't feel it. He can a little bit. You can tell he changes his behavior. You'll see if you go back and watch the video, he definitely picks up his pace on his recall some when I use it a few times. So it's definitely getting a message across to him, but it's not real super hot in the middle of that drill. Well, why is that? Well, that's because I don't want the dog to be afraid to run down that line out into the middle of that field. He knows where those bumpers are, but there's not a big visual signal and he's not running a mark. I want him to know he can run out there and it's all safe. I won't give away Marc Patton's secret about how to teach young dogs blinds either, but that's a huge component of how Marc teaches young dogs blinds. There's very, very little, if any, pressure out in the field for very few things. Now, if he doesn't leave, if I tell Boone to leave, and if he doesn't leave, then he's receiving a high correction near me. So the mini educator, if you don't know it, or the educator collars allow you instantaneous access to 2 levels, a low level and a high level, and you can adjust the difference between the two. So I think, well, I know today I have my downfield set up for about 3 or something. It is 3, which means my close up, if Boone didn't leave and I had to force him away from me, would be at about 40, something like that. So it's a pretty significant difference, but it's all meant to take advantage of the fact that the dog knows where pressure is going to occur when he hears a given cue. So you can see there's some urgency in Boone leaving me. In fact, he jumps slightly to the side. He doesn't even leave perfectly straight at the moment, which I need to square away later. But the reason for that is because he knows when he hears back, what are you doing? You hear back? Yeah. When he hears back in that context, now he's not reacting to it now, of course, but when he hears back in that context, he needs to get away from me, because if he stays near me, there's going to be pressure right there, and it's not just a little bit. So he needs to launch and he needs to get away from me in that situation. Downfield, if there's an infraction, I'm using a much lower number because I don't want him to think, well, there's a ton of pressure near dad when he says back, but there could also be a ton of pressure out in the field. So I don't want to run out there. Imagine how confused and how cautious and just almost how abusive that would be to a really smart, sensitive dog like Boone. It would be absolutely torturous. So, I don't know, 9 minutes of me talking, walking a dog walk around the park, watching a dog walk around the park. I don't know if it has any value to you, but if it does, I hope I delivered you something that might be something to think about when you're out working with your retriever. Don't ever forget, they know where pressure occurs in a given context and in a given situation. Once they hear a given cue, they not only know there is pressure, but they know where it is, and their natural inclination is to move away from that pressure. So think about this as you're balancing your paw work. Think about this as you're trying to reinforce a sit and you're doing it right now, you're next to your side and you're nicking the dog in the spot you want them to heel. Think about this when you're trying to heel your dog to the line with a tab, with a 1-foot tab and a prong collar, and you're constantly prying them while they're next to you where they kind of belong. Think about this from the dog's standpoint. Whether or not doing the things you want to do are not only fun, but are they in line with what the dog's natural instincts are going to be. And keep in mind, the instinct with pressure is to get out of that spot at all times. That's not going to change. It's genetically coded. You cannot change that part of the dog. So think about what you're doing that might be rubbing up against that, and maybe modify your training a little bit to suit. If you found this video interesting and it was thoughtful and helpful to you, you can find me on YouTube here, also Instagram and Facebook. Appreciate you liking, following, and subscribing to the accounts. Darren from On Command Dog Training, hopefully giving you something you can use.